The temple also devotees online. So we have a very special speaker, Keshava Prabhu. He is a youth member of our congregation, moved from Orlando, Florida. And a little bit about him. He is a born devotee, born to Vaishnava parents, and grew up in ISKCON, in Krishna conscious culture. He's a wonderful, wonderful Vaishnava. He studied in UTD, University of Texas at Dallas. He is working for Tesla now. And more importantly, he is a scholar as well. He is well read in Vedic scriptures and also fantastic Kirtanier. I would say maybe one of the best Kirtaniers, at least as far as I know, in Texas region. So there are so many things to talk about, but in the interest of time, let's welcome Keshava Prabhu by loudly chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra one time together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Over to you, Keshava Prabhu. Sing along. Prabhu will sing, you sing, repeat.
So I guess we'll start with Jai Radha Madhava. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridhari.
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm very grateful to all of you, to Satya Sai Prabhu and Jai Bhadramaji, for giving me some opportunity to speak a little bit, despite my lack of qualifications. Let me see. Let me see if everybody's able to see my screen. Like I mentioned, I'm very new to the community here, very grateful to be in all of your association, and above all, grateful to be able to serve you all in some way or the other. Satya Sai Prabhu asked that I speak on Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, verse 30, which is essentially about the power of being able to practice bhakti despite imperfections, being imperfect in your practice, having imperfections as you're going through. And I'm still very nervous. It's been many months, I think, since I've given any sort of class. My sadhana is an absolute shambles. I'm still kind of getting settled. But there's a quote that my father shared actually with some devotees maybe a day or two ago. And after I read this, then I thought this is, okay, this is a interesting sign, I guess, for continuing. This is a quote by Srila Prabhupada from August 14th, 1972, Los Angeles. Realization means that you should write, every one of you. What is your realization? What for this back to Godhead is? You write your realization, what you have realized about Krishna. That is required. It is not passive. Always you should be active. Whenever you find time, you write. Never mind, 2 lines, 4 lines, but you write your realization. Between writing and speaking, there's not much of a difference. Shravanam Kirtanam, writing or offering prayers, glories. This is one of the functions of the Vaishnava. You are hearing, but you have to write also. Then write means smaranam, remembering what you have heard from your spiritual master, from the scripture. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, about Vishnu, not for others. Don't write any nonsense thing for any nonsense man. Useless waste of time. Vishnu, write about Vishnu, Krishna. This is cultivation of Krishna consciousness. Hear, write, remember, try to understand. And so after a week of stressing and thinking, whether I should give this class, whether I shouldn't, I saw this and I'm thinking, okay, Srila Prabhupada wants all of us to share something about Krishna. No matter what level we're at, no matter what amount of realization we have, whatever we have, we should say something about Krishna. And whenever we speak about speaking for our own purification, I'm figuring out that the more you have to actually go deeply to understand something, to explain it, I think, especially given that my sadhana, my reading has been absolutely terrible. I haven't read this much in months, maybe. Being able to actually understand something to explain. So in that sense, I've already gotten purification just by the request of all you Vaishnavas. But still, I want to actually be able to present something of value. So I ask for your blessings, and here's the verse that Prabhuji speaks on. Api chet suduracharo bhajate. Sorry. Bhajate mam ananya bhak. Sadhur eva samantavya. Samyak vyavasito hi saha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. When I first read this verse, as a child, it took me a while to actually understand even a portion of it. It seemed a little out of place even in the rest of chapter 9 where we're speaking about devotional service. Because, okay, we're talking about devotional service, then Krishna says, okay, I'm impartial to everybody, but whoever's a devotee, I'm especially partial to them. So that already confused me. I'm thinking, okay, is he impartial or is he partial? And then later on, then he says, okay, whoever is performing devotional service, he should be considered to be saintly, even if he's engaged in all sorts of activities. And I thought, well, this seems very partial, actually. Krishna is giving a lot of excess allowances to the devotees. And so I later on got some amount of understanding of how, I guess, transgressions or how misappropriations of this verse could be there, and how it should be handled by people in a position of power. But more, I guess, relevant to me now, in the position I'm in my devotional life, and where I'm at, just starting a new job, starting a new, moving anywhere else. I think the smaller aspects of being fixed in devotional service is what really stood out to me. And especially developing a culture of honest devotional practice. And so a couple questions came to my mind. A couple of terms that stood out to me. What does it mean to be worshipping, bhajate mam ananya bhak, worshipping Krishna without deviation? What does it mean to consider somebody a sadhu? Sadhu deva samantavya. Does it mean that they're a sadhu? Does it mean they're not a sadhu, but you should consider them as one? Does it mean that they're on the path to becoming a sadhu, so they're as good as being a sadhu? And what is that qualification? Krishna says they should be considered sadhu because samyak vyavasito pisaha. They're fixed in their determination. And so therefore, what is this fixed determination that they have? And if they're that fixed in determination, then how are they continuing to commit actions that are unfavorable to bhakti? These were all things that kind of stood out to me, especially in my state of life that I wanted to get through. And at the very least, if we can understand those, then I'll think that I've shared something worthwhile from Srila Prabhupada's literatures. So when we spoke about different types of activities, Srila Prabhupada speaks in the purport that there's two types of activities, conditional and relative. And this comes, when I was reading in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Rasika Ranjani commentary, this is coming directly from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he gives two different terms for it. He calls sambandhika activities and svarupagata activities. In other words, while you're still in a body, while you're still embodied, conditioned soul, then no matter what, you have various activities that are relative to that body. They could be physical activities like having to get dressed, take care of yourself, take shower. They could be activities relating to your samskaras, that you have certain attachment to activities because of being embodied for so many lifetimes. And yet, when you come into contact with devotional service, there's a different activity called svarupagata. Activities related to your svarup, to your eternal identity. This is also known as Kevala Bhakti, as unalloyed devotional service. These activities are not relative to the body. And so we can see that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that the pure bhakti of a jiva in a bound state also retains an inevitable relationship with sambandhika conduct. If bhakti in the form of ananya bhajan or exclusive bhajan arises in the bound jiva, sambandhika conduct must continue while the physical body remains. So as long as we're embodied, then we have certain responsibilities. Srila Prabhupada calls it functioning within society, for fulfilling the rules and regulations of society, the purport. When bhakti arises, the jiva has no other taste. To the extent that ruchi for Krishna, or taste for Krishna, flourishes, the taste for lower things will deteriorate. Until that is completely exhausted, sometimes the power of those things of a lower taste may manifest and lead one to engage in abominable acts. However, this will soon be suppressed by Krishna ruchi. And so, that gave me some idea that, okay, imperfect activities are due to being in an imperfect state, of being embodied. But it didn't really explain that more. It didn't explain that much more in terms of what that actually meant. And so I wanted to look further. Okay, somebody who might have these disqualifications, they're embodied, they're still dealing with practice, they're engaged in one-pointed service. What does that mean? And Srila Prabhupada, he explains various different ways, and they're coming from different explanations of the acharyas. For example, when we see what Sridhar Swami writes, he says, this is his commentary, he writes very short. The power of bhakti or loving devotional service is so potent that it is indomitable and indestructible. So when he speaks about ananya bhakti or ananya bhak, he says that somebody, no matter what their background is, they'll worship the Supreme Lord or any of his authorized incarnations exclusively with determination, comprehending that all other devas are but part of him. And so in other words, that he decides that he'll worship only Krishna. He'll worship nobody else. One-pointed means that he has no other object of worship. He doesn't give up the worship of Krishna to worship anybody else. And so therefore, by doing so, that's resolve that he said. And so, okay, most of us are in that situation. We don't take up any other worship, really. We consider that Krishna is our worshipable Lord. And so then, what else is in the verse? We might think, okay, I'm not engaged in sudurachar. I'm not engaged in the most heinous of activities. But it's humbling to me, at least, to admit that I'm still subject to smaller durachar, falling short in some way or the other of the ideals of bhakti. It doesn't necessarily need to mean the most heinous of activities. I'm still guilty of conducting so many activities with material attachment. I'm still able to say that I'm dealing with activities that are non-Vaishnav in nature. At first I was thinking, okay, who else is, by a show of hands, who at any point of their life, either before or during their practice of bhakti, has at some point dealt with some activities that they're thinking, well, this is not the conduct of a Vaishnava. At the very least, I can say myself. And that can take so many different forms. That could be, I'm dealing with, talking with Vaishnavas, I'm talking with devotees, and I lose my anger, I lose my temper. I'm thinking, okay, that's not really Vaishnava ideal. For some people, it might be breaking the regulative principles before coming to bhakti. It might be struggling with those regulative principles even after coming to bhakti. Or it might be understanding, okay, this is the ideal that we should be at, and yet I'm not able to follow that ideal. Or I'm trying to follow that ideal, or I'm struggling somehow or the other. In some sense, when we talk about achar or good conduct, sadachar, all of the descriptions of the Shastra really follow one thing. Smartavyam sataram Vishnu vismartavyam najatuchit sarva vidhi nishedasyor etayor eva kinkara. The essence of all rules and regulations means that one should always remember Krishna and one should never forget Krishna. And in some way or the other, I can say at the very least that I've forgotten Krishna so many times, even after taking up the process of devotional service, whether it's for a day, whether it's for a month, whether it's for multiple months. And so in some sense or the other, this verse still applies to us. And so then, what does that fixed determination mean if we're still falling short in some way or the other? The reason I came up with this verse was with discussion with Satyasar Prabhu during one of the recent classes. And he mentioned something that I later saw again here in the commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He phrases this as a conversation between a devotee, or between Arjuna and Krishna. So Krishna is saying that my attachment to my devotee is natural. Even if his behavior is degraded, my attachment to him is not lost, and I make him supremely righteous. For this reason, Sri Bhagavan speaks this verse, beginning with Apichet. Sudurachara means that even if he's addicted to killing others, to having illicit relations, and being attached to others' wealth, if he engages in bhajan, worship of me, he is surely saintly. So that's taking it to the extreme, like we mentioned, Sudurachara, the most heinous of activities. And he also echoes what Sridhar Swami says, what Srila Prabhupada says. What type of bhajan must he perform? In answer to this, Bhagavan says, Ananya Bhak. He's a sadhu who does not worship any demigod, but only worships me. Who does not engage in any fruitive work, in any karma, in any jnana, but only engages in bhakti to me. And who does not desire any happiness, but only, such as the attainment of a kingdom, but only desires to attain him. And so, not only does he not worship anybody else, but he doesn't try for any other system of achieving perfection. So this goes a step further, that he's not engaged in karma yoga, he's not engaged in jnana yoga, that bhakti yoga is his only method. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says the obvious question that we're all asking. Where is the question of his being a sadhu if some type of bad behavior is visible in him? Krishna says he must be considered a sadhu. Mantavya means that if one does not consider him a sadhu, then there's a flaw in that person's thinking. And Arjuna might say, well, okay, but maybe he's on the path to being a sadhu, but maybe he's a partial sadhu, he's on the way to being a sadhu. Why do you say he isn't why do you say he's a full sadhu? And this is the part that I want to focus on for basically the rest of the class. This is something that stood out to me very, very deeply, and it echoed exactly what Satyasar Prabhu spoke to me when I was asking him about a question, and he referenced this verse. In response, Sri Bhagavan says, Eva, he is to be considered a complete sadhu. One should not see that he lacks any saintly qualities. This is because he has made a staunch resolve. What is his vyavasita, his fixed determination? Okay, I may have certain attachments to things. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it could even be engaged to attachment to very unrighteous things. And due to my sins, I may go to hell. I may go into an animal species of life. I definitely will have some reaction to that. But despite that, I will never give up exclusive one-pointed bhakti to Sri Krishna. So that's something that stood out a lot to me. This is what he considers to be staunch resolve. That, okay, I might be engaged in all these activities. Maybe I might not be engaged in sudurachara, but in some way or the other, I'm falling short of what I want to be practicing. But fixed determination means that even if I will face some reaction for that, I will not give up worship of Krishna. And there's a very relevant verse compared to that was being cited in that class. And I've seen it come up so many different times. When Krishna speaks to Uddhava, he says, Jata Shaddha Matkathasu Nirvinna Sarva Karmasu Veda Dukhatmakan Kaman Parityage Pyanishvara Tato Bhajeta Mam Prita Shraddhalu Dridhanishchayah Jushamana Chatan Kaman Dukhodar Kams Chagarhayan. Having awakened faith in the narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment. Does anybody else relate to this verse? At least a little bit. We understand, at least theoretically, from coming to Krishna consciousness that, okay, we should serve Krishna. We shouldn't aspire for anything else. That pure bhakti means anyabhilashita shunyam, that any other desires shouldn't be there. We understand from Gita, okay, all these different activities are going to lead to suffering. Material activities we should be given up. But yet, parityage pyanishvaraha, when it comes to actually giving them up, we find ourselves incapable. What does Krishna say we should do? Tato bhajeta mam prita. You should continue to worship me with priti, with great affection. And we should have a very firm conviction, dridha nishchaya. Understanding that, okay, whatever may happen, I'll regret whatever may happen. I'm regretting that I'm unable to give up those activities. And yet, no matter what, I'm not going to give up devotional service in that sense. And so this is what stood out to me as honest practice of bhakti. Not only are you continuing to practice bhakti, not only are you not giving up the practice of devotional service, but you're honest about it. What does that look like? You acknowledge your shortcomings. I'm conditioned in my life. I have these things I'm struggling with. And yet you reaffirm your commitment to the path of bhakti. However, I'm fixed in my determination. I might be wavering along the path, but my destination on that path is fixed. No matter what, I'm still aiming for this end goal. And so I might get caught in various problems, I might get caught in so many different things because I'm not sticking to the path exactly. But I should not lose track of that goal. And the most important thing for that is to continue to practice by seeking association. We should be honest with ourselves. We should be honest with Krishna. But to sustain that practice, we should be honest and develop close relationships with devotees, in which we can maintain that honesty. The most important thing in terms of developing lasting devotional service is maintaining association with devotees. But we always say that. What does that association actually look like? That honesty should extend not only to yourself, not only to Krishna, but to those deep friendships and deep relationships that you develop with devotees. And therefore, we should develop those deep relationships with a culture of compassion and closeness. That starts with ourselves having understanding for other devotees. Understanding that, okay, if I'm seeing that I am having difficulties with devotional service, why should I have any sense of hypocrisy in thinking, oh, this person is having difficulty with the devotional service, or this person is doing something, or they're falling short of the ideal, or, okay, that's happening, but I'm dealing with that also. Krishna says that that person should still be considered glorious. And so, real sadhu sangha, real association with devotees means that you develop those closeness with devotees where you can understand, okay, where you can come to them and say, I'm having some difficulty, Prabhu. I'm struggling with this in my devotional life. I'm struggling with that in my devotional life. I need your help with something. And without that, then you cannot have strong sadhu sangha. And in this verse, Krishna says, right, sadhu reva samantavya. The main quality of a sadhu, in Gita, it's said twice. 10:9. Machita madhyata prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayanta shamam nityam tushyanti charamanticha. What are sadhus doing? They're always engaged in all these activities, in constantly glorifying the Lord and all these things. But they do this in plural. They're always doing this in the association of others. Sataram Kirtayanto Mam, when Kirtan spoke a couple weeks ago, he made the same point, that when the devotees are firmly together, when they're engaged in devotional service together, then they can practice Vidhanishchaya very firmly. And so if we develop this culture of welcoming devotees, of encouraging devotees, no matter what position they are in their devotional life, then our bhakti will flourish, their bhakti will flourish, and we can develop this culture by which we can have a society of sadhus. We can have a sangha of sadhus. Especially because practicing in Kali Yuga, practicing in a conditioned life, it's not easy. And we see so many people that fall away from the practice. When I was in Dallas, one dear friend and mentor of mine, who's in temple management, they mentioned to me that growing up in that community, living in that community of Dallas, there's so many devotees that she saw that were around the entire area. And they were engaged in so many different things. They're serving so much in the community, serving so staunchly. In fact, they're living in the community, they're doing so many things. But she saw so many times that something may have happened in their life, that maybe they got some illness in the family, death in the family, maybe something happened, they had a divorce, or they had something happen with their relationship. Something or the other happened by which they were not practicing as strictly, as staunchly as they were before. And she said that the thing that struck her was that they were affected by so much shame at not practicing at the level they were originally practicing, that they found it hard to come back to the association of devotees. And many of them stopped practicing for that reason. And being part of the temple management now, she spoke so much about how she wanted to develop that community such that we should accept everybody. We should understand, okay, this is the ideal, but we should understand also that this is a difficult process. Manusyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye. That many thousands of people might strive in this process. And of those, maybe one, of thousands of people in the world, maybe one might even strive for this process. And of thousands of those people, maybe one might even succeed. And so the odds of even pursuing the process or succeeding in the process are not with us. And so it stood out to me when I spoke with this devotee that it's a collective endeavor, really, to want to develop this understanding and encouraging an honest practice of bhakti with ourselves and with others around. But there's one other thing that came up that I was a little bit unsure about, because when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur spoke, he said that Ananya Bhak, firm fixed determination, one-pointed devotional service, also means that this person does not take up any other practice. They don't worship anybody else. But they don't also go towards jnana, they don't go towards vairagya, they don't go towards renouncing, cultivation of knowledge, cultivation of renouncing one's results and working. And right after that same verse that I mentioned, then Krishna also says, for a devotee engaged in my loving service, tasman mad bhakti yuktasya, then the cultivation of knowledge and renunciation, na jnanam na cha vairagyam, is generally not the means of achieving the highest perfection within this world. And so what does that mean? We are cultivating a path of attachment and not detachment. Even Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says that maybe in the beginning stages, jnana and vairagya can be slightly useful in practicing bhakti. But eventually, or quite quickly, they end up becoming not helpful, actually, in the practice. Why is that the case? And why does this state of ananya bhak, being firmly fixed on Krishna, require that we don't really take up anything else? When we speak about detachment, then we talk about actively cultivating a disinterest in other things. That we're thinking that, okay, we need to give up this, we need to give up that. Attachment is a function of the heart, according to Rupa Goswami. And so, as we're practicing detachment, then we're hardening the heart. We're cutting off all these other attachments. But yet, if we do that, then where is our hope to actually develop attachment to Krishna? If we cut off the hope for all other attachments, our process is not to do that. Our process is to develop attachment to Krishna, rather than hardening our heart through practices like jnana and vairagya. Once that happens, then Krishna himself has an attachment for his devotees. We saw at the beginning of that purport. Krishna says that he has a natural attachment for his devotees. And he'll take care of them. He'll make sure, that sadhureva samantavya, that he'll become a sadhu. How does that happen? He himself will take away those attachments as we develop love for him. And so our process is not to actively cultivate detachment. That, I want to give up this, I want to give up that, I need to stop doing this actively, like pushing myself to do that. Our path is to develop attachment and love for Krishna. Hearing about Krishna, engaging in service to Krishna, engaging in associating with Krishna through his name, through his pastimes. Through doing that, we develop love for Krishna. One example might come to mind. Many of you may have had small children at one point of time. Has anybody had a circumstance where your kid, maybe 2 or 3 years old, is reaching for something that is going to harm them? They're in the kitchen with you and they see like a small knife, looks really shiny, and let me go grab that. It's not really easy for them to be like, okay, no, this is not good, I should cultivate detachment and get away from that. But their mom and dad, whichever one of you is with them, is going to be like, no, this is not good for you, and they'll forcibly take it away. And, okay, they might cry a little bit, but they'll eventually get settled down. Why is that? Because their love for you is stronger than their attachment to that particular object. Does that make sense? In other words, our goal is not to artificially develop detachment for these other things. But if we develop love for Krishna, when he acts in different ways so as to help us develop detachment from these things, our love for Krishna is higher, our attachment for Krishna is higher than our attachment for those objects. And therefore, detachment doesn't need to be cultivated. We can see that in so many different areas. We can see when there's a famous or infamous verse that many of us have heard, where Krishna says, Yasyaham anugrihnami, harishye chadhanam shanai. That when he especially favors someone, he gradually takes away everything from them. And we always used to joke, like me and my roommate, Chaitanya Baprabhu, we'd always say, okay, this is not the verse we say to people who are just coming to Krishna consciousness. When we have our Bhakti Vriksha, when we first invite people to our college programs, if we say, okay, when Krishna especially favors somebody, he takes away these things, that might be the last time we'll see them at our home program. But then the next verse says that he gives them the highest mercy in that sense. But that verse is not there in isolation. If he takes away those things for somebody that he does not have special mercy for, then there's no relationship. Their love for him will not outweigh their attachment for those things. And so therefore, Vishaya Vinivartante, that we might have those attachments, but until we develop that higher attachment for Krishna, then we cannot achieve that taste. And Krishna says this as much himself. He says as much himself. I think this is in the prayers of the Devatas, the prayers of the residents of Jambudvip. But they say of Krishna, Satyam dishat yat titam attito nrinam, nirvartato yat punarattitayatam. Swayam vidatte bhajatam anichatam, icha bidhanam nijapad pallavam. That Krishna will fulfill the desires of the person who approaches him. But what happens if they keep asking for those things? He won't give in such a way that they'll keep asking for more and more benedictions. I think this is also cited in Madhya chapter 22. Mahaprabhu cites this again. So how does he actually deal with his devotees? He'll give you what you're looking for, of course, sure. Because not everybody that comes to devotional service will come desiring him alone. Arto jigyasu artati bhartashava. That people will come seeking wealth. People will come seeking other things. And from that, maybe they'll develop some desire to attain him. But he gives shelter at his own lotus feet. Even though such a person may not aspire for it originally. And that shelter will satisfy all his desires. That is the Supreme Personality's special mercy. So when Krishna says he gives special mercy, that's what that looks like. That when you come to him with desires, he'll fulfill those desires, definitely. But he's thinking of the long goal. He's thinking that, okay, this is not good for you. Let me take this away. And as you're developing attachment for Krishna, you understand, okay, this is for my own good. Maybe this knife is not the best for me to play with. And yet, there's one original doubt that came up, which is actually why I originally came to Satya Sai Prabhu in the first place. We often hear about the seventh offense to the holy name. Namno balad yasya hi papa buddhir navidyate tasya yamarihi shuddhi. The greatest offense at the lotus feet of the holy name is to think that since chanting the holy name can counteract all sinful reactions, one may therefore go on sinning and at the same time chant the holy name to neutralize the reactions. In Padma Puran, when they say this, they say it so heavily. One who navidyate tasya yamarihi shuddhi. One who thinks in this way cannot be purified by any program of sense restraint and severe austerity, nor by the various punishments of Yamaraj. So I approached and I said, this seems very counterintuitive. This seems very like these two things are at odds. How can we continue practicing if we're imperfect, and yet if we're committing activities on the strength of a holy name, then that's offensive to the name. And Prabhuji said intention is really the answer. And it comes down to the root of what we consider to be devotional service. Everything that we work at in our devotional service is about personalism. When Srila Prabhupada came to practice, to propagate devotional service, he himself put in his pranam mantra, Nirvishesha Shunyavari Paschatya Deshatarine. He's coming to free all of us in the Western world from this insidious impersonalism. And so in all of the offenses to the holy name, the root of them is really treating the deeply personal name. The name himself is a person. He's Krishna himself. In fact, more merciful than any other form of Krishna. And the root of any other offense is this impersonalism that comes from it. And when you think of it in that way, then it makes complete sense. Because think about it, if you have a friend who is always expecting you to bail them out, who has this sense of entitlement, that, oh, no matter what I get into, my friend's going to take care of me. I don't need to worry about anything. I can be pretentious. I can be uppity. And even while they're doing that, they're thinking that they're all right. They're a solid person. They're a solid friend. And yet, their only relationship with you is to expect you to get them out of trouble all the time. Has anybody had a friend like that? Has anybody considered them a really good friend? And so if we're thinking of Krishna as a person, if we're thinking of the holy name as a person, how can we expect to treat him that way? Right? The difference between this offensive mentality and what we mentioned before from this verse is this sense of honest openness. When you have a friend, if you're in trouble even, then you first focus on developing a relationship with them. You have a closeness with them first. And you have an openness to them. And you go in without having any expectations of them. That's a good friend. And even if you're in trouble, you're like, oh, I got into some trouble, some expense came up and I have to borrow some money, but even if whatever happens, I don't want to approach you for any money. I don't want to approach you for anything. From everything we saw so far of Krishna, Krishna will undoubtedly help. But our mood should not be to be entitled to his help, to expect his help. Our mood, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, is that he's my friend. He's my closest person. Whatever may happen from my attachment to all these activities, I may go to hell if that may be the case. I may go into animal life. Who knows what will happen because I'm addicted to these sinful activities. But that's not going to stop me from being friends with my friend, from approaching Krishna and worshiping Krishna. And so that hits the root of this personalism in our expectation. In fact, we see this at the root of so many of the Acharya's prayers. There's a category of prayers called Vigyapti, expressing one's own fallenness. And in most of those, actually, now that I've thought about that, when I started looking back at those prayers, Vigyapti Panchak that Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes about, so many different prayers of the Acharyas, there's a deep sense of fallenness. There's a sense of humility that they have where they're saying, that I'm in such a difficult position, even though they may not be in that position. They're speaking for our benefit. But there's no sense of expectation. In fact, there's one of my favorite verses that Rupa Goswami writes. Kamadinam katina katitha palita nideshas tesham jata maina karuna natapano pashanti utsrajhetan athayadupate sampratam labda buddhis tvamayata sharanam abhayam mam niyung svatmadasye. Rupa Goswami is saying that he's in a similar position. Oh my Lord, there's no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires. Although I have rendered these desires so much service, they have not shown any mercy to me. I have not been ashamed to serve them, nor have I even desired to give them up. O my Lord, O head of the Yadu dynasty, recently, however, my intelligence has been awakened, and now I am giving them up. Due to transcendental intelligence, I now refuse to obey the unwanted orders of these desires, and I now come to you to surrender myself at your fearless lotus feet. Kindly engage me in your personal service and save me. Even despite Rupa Goswami asking to save him, he never asks that Krishna take away his sufferings, that Krishna relieve him of all these things and remove all these desires from him. He asks only to Sharanam Abhayam. Let me be engaged in your service, through which I'll attain Abhayam. Right? Bhaja Hare Manashinandana Abhaya Charanaravindavi. The devotee has full faith that just if Krishna gives service, then everything else will come from that. And so that's approaching without a sense of entitlement, without a sense of expectation. And how does Krishna respond? If my devotee has not fully conquered his senses, he may be harassed by material desires. But because of his unflinching devotion for me, he will not be defeated by sense gratification. Or in other words, Abhishet Sudaracharo, Bhajate Mamananyabhak. That no matter what may happen, he's still trying his best to serve me. And he's convinced that no matter what happens, he won't give up that service. And what is the result of that? Kshipram bhavati dharmatma. That quickly he'll become righteous. In fact, Krishna says that immediately in the verse after this, that Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. That Arjuna should proclaim it boldly, that such a devotee will never perish. In fact, he's so emphatic in that he doesn't even want to let his own word stand for it. Because his word, he admits, might be a little tenuous. He's already making plans that if Bhishma Dev starts shooting arrow, even as he's speaking Gita, he has in his mind, my devotee is so dear to me, that I'm willing to break my word for them. But I'm not willing to break their word. And so, if we have that sense of deep honesty with ourselves, with Krishna, and with the devotees we're associating with, then undoubtedly Krishna will definitely be able to reciprocate with us in that way. And by developing that higher taste, then any other distasteful or abominable activities that we will have in our practice will eventually be delivered. That's something that was very, reassuring to me in very unsteady aspects of my bhakti. Even right now, this is like starting a new job, moving to a new place, working night shift, coming here right after work. I'll be quite honest, my usual sadhana is in absolute shambles. And having said that, I'm not sure if Satyasar Prabhu is going to invite me back now that I've said that. But I can see that Prabhu is a good judge of character, as Krishna is. And he would have been that much more unlikely to have me speak if I were trying to say that I was anything that I wasn't. And so, I hope and pray that with that level of, honesty, that we can develop that community of being honest with ourselves, being honest with Krishna, and accepting when other devotees are honest with us as well. Like I said, I went through 10 different iterations of trying to figure out how to deal with this. All of you are my seniors. I want to ask that if any of you have any questions, I'll try to answer them to the best of my knowledge. If any of you have any corrections, I'll gladly take them. And especially for me, I've already gained so much purification by just preparing for this, but I'm trying to give something that can help you. So if anybody has any takeaways, anything that stood out to them, that they appreciated, that they remembered, I'll really appreciate that as well. Otherwise, I'll think that I may have rambled for about an hour and everybody forgot everything. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna devotees, if you have any questions, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the nice class. So I have a question like, what is the draw line? So often we study, right? Krishna is not an order supplier. So, and at the same time, being a devotee, we cannot go anyone and anyone else can go and ask other than Krishna for anything. So can you throw some light on this, Prabhu?
That's a really good question, actually. Thank you so much for asking that. So you're right. Srila Prabhupada says that we shouldn't have Krishna be our order supplier. We shouldn't go to him for all of our needs. And again, that goes into that aspect of expectation. When we go into that, with other Devi Devatas, when we worship them, they are bound by the laws of karma. Whatever we ask them for, if we actually are offering something, we're offering yajna to them, they're obligated by the laws that Krishna has put them under to respond. They're obligated to provide that. Krishna is the one who made those laws himself. He's not obligated to that. In that verse I quoted from Canto 5, he said that he is not obligated to do that. However, again, we mentioned that we are developing a relationship with Krishna. You might have heard this example before, that if you have a father who's a millionaire, you don't ask him for small, petty things. But it becomes different when you think about the relationship you have with him, right? When we mentioned Ananya Bhakta, we said that this devotee does not go to anybody else. So if you go to your father, he's a millionaire, and you're like, Dad, can I have a pen? Or something small. Yes, maybe that's less than what he can give to you, but he appreciates still that whatever you need, you go to him. That he's the first person you go to. That in and of itself is a characteristic of a devotee. And so that develops closeness with Krishna. The specific nature of that is that you go to Krishna with all of your, be open, be honest with him. Yes, Krishna, I do have this desire. When Kardama Muni was meditating, right, Lord Vishnu appeared before him, and he was embarrassed to say what his desire was. He said, my Lord, I want a wife. What does Krishna say? He says, I know. We can't hide whatever we desire from him. We can't provide this sense of, let me try to be something that I'm not and just, I'm a pure devotee, I want this. Only love for you. Krishna knows. What he appreciates is when we go to him with those desires. And in the sense of, whatever you give me, this is where I'm at in life. I have the desires for these things. If you desire to fulfill it, sure. If you desire not to fulfill it, sure. I know you have my best interests at heart, and I accept whatever you choose to give to me. Does that help to clarify?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Keshav, wonderful class. I wanted to ask, you mentioned the difference, or you talked about being authentic when both talking to Krishna and devotees. What is the difference between authentic or being authentic and like making excuses, saying like, oh, I know myself, I won't be able to chant 16 rounds, or, you know, like, technically that is being authentic, but that's making an excuse. So how do we bridge the gap between those two things?
Also a very good question, and that's something that we all have to be very, very, I guess, wary of. Because so many times, I've also fallen into that trap of like, oh, you know, I'm an Anishtata Bhakta, I'm unsteady, I'm having so much difficulty with my rounds, with this, with that, I don't know when it's going to happen. The key point is that while we might be wavering in our determination along the path, our goal is still the same. In other words, we still have the desire to achieve the highest perfection, which is love of Krishna. And so therefore, even if we know, okay, I'm falling short of the ideal right now, let me try somehow or the other. Okay, I might have attractions to this or that. People my age, okay, we have attractions to going to the movies, to eating outside, so many different things. One sense is to be like, okay, don't give, like, to, okay, I can't give that up, leave it at that. That's not what this verse is saying. First of all, this verse is saying that we should increase our attachment for Krishna. That's one. And two, we should still have that highest goal in the mind. Right now, I'm falling short of chanting 16 rounds. Okay. I was chanting 16 rounds before, I shifted, everything's going crazy. That doesn't mean that I've resigned myself to forever being stuck at not chanting 16 rounds. That is still my goal, to reach the ideal of Srila Prabhupada and to fulfill that specific demand. And so therefore, while I'm understanding my shortcomings, I'm still working towards that. So I think having that goal in mind means that you're still going to keep actively working towards that. Whereas if you don't have that in mind and it's just a nebulous like, oh, I have shortcomings, and you end the sentence right there, then you're stuck in a fog. You can't really go anywhere from there. You cannot end the sentence there. I have shortcomings, but I will still continue to practice bhakti. That's the full thought. That's the full idea behind the verse. Does that help?
Acharya Nishtha Prabhu. Question or comment?
I don't have something planned. No, thank you, Prabhu. It's very enlightening, very inspiring to hear from you. I didn't have anything planned to say, but I think you've very clearly elucidated these very sanguine points from the Shastra. So thank you. I have a lot to take back as a takeaway. Yes, how Krishna is behind everything. Like you said, sometimes these difficulties, and then people can diminish their practice, which they can later feel guilty about. So seeing Krishna behind whatever happens in the devotee's life is sometimes a disconnect. Something happened, but we're not able to see, actually, that's Krishna's hand. And He's touching just what we need. That's been my experience. So Krishna is not far. He's very close. I think we have to remind ourselves of that by good association. It's not the problems on Krishna's side, it's on our side. Krishna is right there willing, inviting us every moment. But are we willing to accept that invitation? Thank you, Bro.
Thank you. And Krishna's affection is there. He's giving the first step. He's providing support at every step as long as we accept that we want that help. That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Mataji's.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for that class. That was amazing. A takeaway is that if we attach ourselves to Krishna, we're going to be able to understand when he takes things from us that is for our benefit. And that's why attaching or growing our love for Krishna is the most important thing that we can do.
Thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. Anybody else has any takeaways? If we have time. If not questions, then at least takeaways. Something that you remember, something that stood out, so I can know what was very forgettable about the class.
Teens, youth. Here.
I like how you brought up Vishwanath Chakravarti. I can't even pronounce his name properly. You know who I'm talking about. I like how you brought up quotes from him and tied it in like that. And I really liked specifically you were talking about how important it is to not get discouraged. If you don't get to practice to the level, I mean, that's because me personally, I totally like vibe with that. Because you could have points in your Krishna conscious where you could practice very nicely and you could get attached to that and then tie your self-worth in with that and then how you're worth to Krishna. And it's so hard to go from that to maybe in times in your life where it's never going to be perfect, you know, you're going to have up and downs in life, the material world. So I really like how you brought that up because that's important, especially for devotees who've been practicing a long time. And something that I've learned from that personally, to add on to that, is that we have to not let our self-worth be tied into our sadhana. Like Krishna loves us whether or not we are doing perfect sadhana. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't always be trying for the highest and like trying to do our best to like do better, of course, always. But to not feel like we don't deserve Krishna's love if we aren't able to reach that. Krishna loves us despite that. So that's just, I think that's something important that I've had to learn through that process of imperfection, working through all this imperfection. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Yeah, I think it's something that a lot of us speak about, a lot of us experience, but very few of us speak about. And we shouldn't let this, we shouldn't let imperfect sadhana or depression over imperfect sadhana be a impediment to improving our sadhana.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, very nice class. Thank you so much. Very, very inspirational. So Prabhu, for me, two takeaways. One is always remembering the goal in our life, no matter what situation we are in. So that was very nice for me, something to remember. And the second, one of the verses, I don't remember the verse, but there it was, even if we approach Krishna with material desires, he will bring us to his lotus feet. And that was very nice, Prabhu. So sometimes we keep doubting ourselves and all, but if we just have faith in Krishna and we do whatever, I mean, we do it in our devotional practice, he is bringing us to his lotus feet, whether we desire for it or not. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Yeah, that's one of my dad and I's favorite verses that he shared with me.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for all your insights and sharing all your knowledge. One takeaway that I was watching on the screen and listening to you was detachment and attachment. And I like the point that you made that if you just continue with your service and your sadhana, you automatically, in time, will become detached from those things that are holding you back. And our number one priority is just becoming more attached to Krishna. And I just recently experienced that in that storm that we just had recently. My phone died. It got wet and it's gone. And because of that, it was the greatest blessing. Because I don't have a cell phone, which we are so attached to, I was able to do so much service and focus on Prabhupada's books and just focus on what's important. So that's a blessing in disguise. And Krishna is really blessing me because he will not be here for another 2 days, my new phone. So, thank you.
I think, yeah, losing your phone might be the biggest explanation of Yatyaham and Grihnami in modern times that we can expect. But yeah, this idea of bhakti really is the most powerful practice compared to jnana, compared to vairagya karma, because of how much everything else is encompassed within that. In fact, like jnanis and other like people who are practicing jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, in like ancient times, they were much more stringent with their requirements because they had to be. It's such a more unforgiving process. The only people that could practice, like who could be grihasthas, basically, householders, were basically bhakti yogis because of how powerful this process is.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful class. Thank you so much. There are several takeaways, points people can take away. One of the points you mentioned, which was really nice, is like you mentioned, if you have someone you can open up in a devotional devotee community. I mean, as a human, we all have our best friends, right? But mostly, and unfortunately, not in a devotee community. So when something happens, we cannot open up. That's a problem. If we have someone who we can open up, maybe we can make a best friend. We can have that's amazing. So anything that happens to us, we can just grab a phone and call or reach out and open up. That's truly devotee. That's really a good point. And a lot of devotees have that, but most of them don't. We have seen throughout the years, right? So some devotees, especially if you are, someone is beginner or kanistadhikari or in early stages, they don't have it. How would you suggest? How can someone make a close friend or best friend within a devotee circle, among devotees, so that anything happens, the first person they can reach out to be the devotee? How can one do that? What would you suggest, Prabhu?
I think that's a really, really amazing question. And you're right, it's very necessary. Because so many of us, I mean, I can't say as much because I grew up in devotional service, but I didn't have as many friends growing up my age until I joined like the boys' like summer trip. But for people who join Krishna consciousness from other places, there's so many other friends that they have. And they have such close friendships and they have good relationships with them. If they become devotees and they're in trouble and the people who are devotees are treating them worse than the people who are non-devotees, that's a big failing on our part. And that's the first thing that's going to drive them away from devotional service. In terms of practically, I'm still working on that myself, Prabhu, because I just got here, like I said, slowly getting to know all of you wonderful devotees. But there's something I heard from, I think it was either Gorkishore Das Babaji or Jagannath Das Babaji in their biography. When they first came across each other, they wept and they started crying and they went to each other and they said, how is your bhajan? That's their first question to each other. How is your bhajan doing? And the other devotee, I'm forgetting the name right now, he started like also crying. He's like, after so many years, I still haven't attained love for the divine couple. Of course, that's a bit idealistic, but I think this concept of being able to share in your devotional practice, one thing that we struggle a lot with non-devotee friends is that there's so much of our life, our practice, that we cannot share with them, that they cannot relate to us with. And yet, whenever we're with devotees, then it's all too easy to slip into like the Haribol relationships, that you see somebody, you say Haribol, and like that's the depth that it goes into. But we have, there's so much of our life that they can understand. So one thing that I always appreciate with at least a couple of deep friends I have is being able to relate to their reading, to their sadhana, to how they're practicing, their struggles in devotional life. And also sharing our shared struggles or activities or successes even. Having those shared experiences means that we can talk about them. In fact, there's one of my friends who's like that, who whenever I see him, I can ask him, Prabhu, what did you read recently? Or he asks me, or he didn't even ask, I didn't even ask him. He's like, Prabhu, I read this thing recently and I thought of you. And I felt like sharing it with you. And it was such a nice verse that I learned it and I still remember it. And now every time I see him, I'm embarrassed whenever I don't read, because I'm like, I don't have anything new to share with you. But we have that relationship that we're always checking in on each other like that. There's other friends I have that whenever we get together, we're always doing Kirtan. And that's something that we can share with each other. And so, like, Krishna consciousness is a shared process. Find ways in which you can share it with other people, and that's how you develop friendships. I think you wanted to add something, Prabhu?
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, I think it's a very deep question on many levels and for different stages of devotion. It becomes very important that one develop very deep friendships. And we hear ideally this is snigdha swajatiya, someone who's very compassionate to us, a little more mature than us, and of similar taste. So not all devotees, we can develop these kind of relationships. It's not because someone's practicing sadhana bhakti that therefore they're very good association for me. Eventually we will find we get nourished by certain types of devotees, certain moods. Krishna consciousness is so diverse. And we need this kind of personal nourishment. So these deep friendships, very deep, it's very rare. If we can have a few deep friend-devotee relationships, I think we're doing good. And that helps us, that's like putting your roots deeper as a tree. If your roots are not deep with other devotees, when the storm comes, you can see what happened. I'm coming from Houston. I saw big trees, the roots were not deep. They got completely smashed. So taking shelter of the advanced devotees. In my experience also, it's not something that we can create. It comes from a very deep prayer, a very deep need in our heart. If we're crying for some deep association, if we really feel we need that, Krishna gives us. So I think on all levels, it's essential. Thank you, Boo.
That point of swajatiya is very important. I remember, I've got to ask you again for where that's from, because I forget the citation. But especially even with brahmacharis, when I was staying in Pune for some time or talking with some other like brahmachari friends of mine, like they mentioned something that I didn't expect. And they said that the reason a lot of devotees change ashram is not because of lust or anything. It's because of loneliness, because they don't develop that closeness. There's always new bhaktas coming in, the people their age are like, their level of advancement are transitioning out of the ashram. They'll have some seniors, but those close friendships, they're not along the same mindset. They're not swajatiya. And so then it becomes difficult to maintain. So that's a very good point. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Last question. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the class. Have a question on the part where you mentioned about like Jnana Yoga and the Ashtanga Yoga and all these other different paths to the devotion may not be the right path or may not lead to your different success. The right path to attain bhakti is I mean, this is based on my understanding of the scripture, is that all these paths eventually lead to bhakti yoga. So is it saying that these paths are probably getting you there, or is it like not the right direction, or is it easy to get into bhakti yoga, or like what is the right path?
I think that's a very good question. I think the terminology you used is something that like once we address that, then it'll be there. And I'm sorry, Prabhu, I know we're running a little late. The point the specific words I used was that bhakti yoga is so that jnana and vairagya are not efficient paths to perfection, to self-realization, to mukti. I have to double check. I'll look for it and I'll find it for you. But there's a verse in I think 10th canto where I think in the prayers of the devatas, Lord Brahma says that any practice to achieve mukti, to achieve perfection, until it has at least a tinge of bhakti in it, it will not have success. So what you're saying, yeah, like they may lead to bhakti. Sure, that's undoubtedly true, because People in Jnana and Vairagya, if they do not reach bhakti, then they will not have success. That being said, if all the other paths are leading to bhakti anyway, then why not start directly at bhakti? Take the direct path. If you're going to try the dead end, before realizing that you need to reach bhakti anyway, start at the beginning with that in mind, that bhakti is actually what will give you that. There's a couple of verses I can think of, but since we're short for time, talk with me afterwards and I can share. Or if anybody also wants whatever is in. Please do, please.
So, even if you have karma, path of karma, jnana, or yoga, still there has to be an element of bhakti to even the system to work, because the Lord Himself has established that. So there has to be an indirect element of bhakti, or bhakti mixed with jnana or karma or yoga. Make sense? So without bhakti, even other processes won't work. They will fail. So in that way, you need bhakti directly or indirectly or in a mixed way. Make sense? Yeah. You got it, Prabhuji?
Oh, I didn't realize I'm still sharing. This is one of them, at least, that I was talking about. Famous verse that the Lord Brahma is saying. So, like previously, the verse before speaks about how the lotus feet of the Lord, accepting shelter of those, are like taking shelter of a boat to cross the ocean in essence. However, this is even more useful than a boat, because when you cross an ocean or a river and you go to the other side, the boat's with you. There's no boat left back there for the other people to follow. But the Lord's lotus feet are more merciful because they're left behind for everybody else to also follow. And so somebody may ask, aside from devotees who always seek shelter at the Lord's lotus feet, there are those who are not devotees, but who have accepted different processes for attaining salvation. So that might be Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, all of those different, right? What happens to them? So Lord Brahma and the other devas say, O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. There's another similar verse where it says that those people that are trying to achieve salvation just by meditating on the impersonal form of the Lord, or by Gyan or Vairagya, their only gain is the trouble that they undergo, like beating an empty husk of grain.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for devotees. Thank you for wonderful questions, and thank you for nicely answering, Prabhu. We would like to hear more from you. Hare Krishna. We're moving on to the next part of our program. Is Arati. Please raise your places, Prabhu. Mataji's. Sevya is going to sing today's Arati Kirtan, and Pujari service by Radha Vinod Prabhu.
Krishna prasthaya bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Krishna Jaya Radha Krishna Jaya Radha Krishna Jaya Radha Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Krishna Balaram Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Gauranita Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Nitya Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitya Gaura Hari Bol
Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Stotra Satushi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Ashlotra Satushi Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Brinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत केदार श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ सम गुण राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की ब्रज भूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की मायापुर नवद्वीप धाम की गंगा माई यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी भक्ति देवी की जय Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Haribol, Haribol. Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha Hiranyakashipur Vakshaha Shilatanka Nakalaye Shilatanka Nakalaye Ito Nasimha Parato Nasimha Ito Nasimha Parato Nasimha Yato yato yamitato nasimha Yato yato yamitato nasimha Bahe Nasimha Hridaye Nasimha Bahe Nasimha Hridaye Nasimha Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade Narasimhamadim Sharanam Prapade Tavakara Kamalavade Nakhamadbhuta Sringa Dalita Hiranyakashipur Tanabhringa Keshavadhita Narahadirupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Keshavadhita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadhita Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Nrsimhadev, 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 Jaya Nrsimhadev. Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj.
Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Shri Bhakti Vigna Shankar Bhagavan ki, Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you, Radha Vinod Prabhu, for the Pujari service. Thank you, Sevya, for Arati Kirtan. Thank you, Keshav Prabhu, for Narsimha Arati.